This presentation, which was first organized by Father Bernard Lafrenière during the 1980s, is neither a history of Holy Cross nor of our ancestors. It is meant to help us experience something of the remarkable events which surrounded the restoration of religious life in the aftermath of the French Revolution. We will be introduced to people and places as they were in the early years of the Holy Cross family. This is a story of a great adventure of hundreds, then thousands of men and women who chose to serve Christ and others in preference to all else. The family of Holy Cross was born on the north side of the River Loire, between Paris and Brittany, more than 160 years ago. Father Dujarrier's birthplace, Rennes en Grenouille, is in the north. Below are Montenay, where Mother Mary of the Seven Dolours was born, and Laval, where she was a boarder at the age of 15. Also, there is Château-Gontier, where Basil Moreau studied, Angers, where Jacques Dujarrier was a seminarian at the beginning of the French Revolution, Solesmes, donc Guéranger's Abbey, Précigné, the Marionites' mother house for 27 years. South of Le Mans are Laigné-en-Belin, where Basil Moreau was born, and Rouillé-sur-Loire, where Father Dujarrier served as pastor for more than 30 years. The family of Holy Cross traces its roots to the work of a village pastor. Jacques-François Dujarrier was born in 1767. He was an average student, noted for his piety. He was even nicknamed the Little Saint. He wanted to become a priest, but during his seminary studies at Angers, the French Revolution broke out. 2 years later, when priests and seminaries were outlawed, Jacques lived with his sister and became a weaver. Eventually, he met Father de la Haye, whose ministry was to those priests who had abandoned their posts during the persecution. This priest encouraged Dujarrier to complete his studies. A farmer and his wife agreed to hide Father de la Haye's seminarian, Jacques, at Fos-Garnier, at a considerable risk to their own lives. To avoid drawing attention to these guests, food was brought to them in the buckets used for the cattle. Father Dujarrier suffered all his life from rheumatoid arthritis, contracted during the extensive time he spent in cold and damp attics, stables, and barns. The family had to be constantly alert for police searches. They would inform Father de la Haye whenever the sick or dying were calling for him. Ministry was possible only at night and in secret. After 1 year of living in this way, Jacques Dujarrier was ordained a priest secretly in Paris on December 26, 1795. He was 28 years old. After returning to Fos-Garnier, he celebrated Mass in a wine cellar, the door of which is in the center of this photograph. Here in this cellar in the middle of the night, on an altar built with a few boards on 2 barrels, the newly ordained priest presided at his first Mass. In prudence, he had not even informed his parents about his ordination. For the next 8 years, Father Dujarrier ministered in secret, always risking his life. These were dangerous times. Many priests were executed. The religious and social fabric of France had been torn apart by the extremes of the Revolution. Churches were sold or closed, deserted or destroyed. Most of the clergy had been sent into exile or scattered throughout the country. The same was true for religious. Teachers had all but disappeared when Dujarrier began his ministry as pastor. This is the interior of St. Peter's Church in Rouillé. Father Dujarrier was officially appointed pastor in 1803 when he was 35 years old. The people loved this man who had risked his life for them. When he became pastor, everything had to be done: repairing the buildings and furnishings, organizing parish life, visiting families, helping the poor, teaching the children religion, reading, and writing. The pastor's attention was drawn to Rouillé Heights, more than 2 miles away, where about 60 children had no opportunity for school. People in the area said they were becoming like little savages. Dujarrier chose to respond. He realized he needed help, and then the adventure really began. He was 39 years old when he established a girls' school. He chose a young woman, Marie Lair, as director and tried to direct her toward religious life. However, her ill temper and rough personality brought Father Dujarrier little more than an endless series of difficulties for more than 10 years. Eventually, she was told her services would no longer be needed. Even with all the difficulties, he forged ahead. He built a house on the heights, which he named Petite Providence, or the Little Providence. At first, his intention was to establish a teacher training school for young women who could be of assistance in rural areas. Later, though, Father Dujarrier established a religious foundation here. By 1812, there were 10 postulants living in this house. Next, he built a chapel where he would celebrate Mass once or twice a week for those whom the bishop was already calling the Sisters of Providence. People from the area would also attend Mass with the sisters. The chapel is 20 feet long by 12 feet wide. 2 small windows bring light to the altar. The chapel was dedicated to the Holy Family as protector and model for the sisters and the people. Above the reredos are 3 hearts, representing the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the cross, Sorrowful Heart of Mary, the sword, Most Pure Heart of Saint Joseph, the white lily. Devotion to these 3 hearts would have a role in the future congregation of Holy Cross until Rome decided that devotion to the heart of Joseph would be suppressed. Visible on the left are the 3 hearts with the cross and anchor, which became the seal for the institution of Holy Cross, the secondary school founded by Father Moreau in 1838. A few years later, Father Moreau published a prayer book for the Brothers of St. Joseph entitled Daily Prayers to the Hearts of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. The 3 hearts were the seal of the Association of Holy Cross, the union of the Brothers of St. Joseph and the auxiliary priests. The 3 hearts were also the seal of the family of Holy Cross when brothers, priests, and sisters belonged to the same congregation. Presently, the Petite Providence serves as a museum for the Congregation of the Sisters of Providence. The tree begins in 1806 and shows the arrival of the sisters in Indiana 1 year before Father Sorin. The sisters lived in a dormitory in the attic covered with slates. Having no insulation, it was hot in summer and cold in winter. Commenting on the poverty there, Mother Mary Magdalene wrote to her family, quote, "This is exactly what we need. It looks like the stable in Bethlehem," unquote. Countess Zoe de Rasco, well-educated and of deep faith, served the poor in her native Brittany before entering the Sisters of Providence at Rouillé. She took the name Sister Mary Magdalene and became superior at the end of her novitiate. She was 38 years old. Her rigorous schedule and many privations led to her death in 1822, leaving Dujarrier grief-stricken. Her successor was quite different. Perrine Aimée Lecoeur, light-hearted and free-spirited, entered the Petite Providence in 1820 and took the name Mary. Mother Mary Lecoeur was an energetic and devoted superior of the sisters for almost 50 years, maintaining the spirit of the early days. During that period, in 1820, when Father Dujarrier was 53 years old, he founded the Brothers of St. Joseph to educate boys. He wanted the sisters to share their material goods with the newly founded brothers, a desire that Mother Mary opposed completely. Bishop Caron of Le Mans supported her position, and in 1831, Father Dujarrier was removed as superior of the sisters. Philippe Caron served as Bishop of Le Mans from 1829 to 1833, during the time of the major crises between the sisters and brothers. The July 1830 revolution brought a new wave of opposition against the Church. The Brothers of St. Joseph scattered, and only 12 gathered for the annual retreat with Father Dujarrier and Father Basile Moreau. They signed a pact of fidelity, which represented a new beginning for this community. Now only 12, this community had accepted 155 postulants in an earlier 3-year period. In 1831, Bishop Caron himself came to Rouillé to separate the patrimony of the brothers from that of the sisters. Signing the proceedings were Brothers André Motet, Léonard, and Henri, Mother Mary Lecoeur, Monseigneur Bouvier, Vicar General, Father Dujarrier, and Bishop Philippe Caron. The separation disappointed many, especially Father Dujarrier and Brother André. André not only wanted union with the sisters, he had spoken openly about a third branch, a society of priests to be named Missionaries of the Sacred Heart. This is the Grande Providence in Rouillé. In 1858, when the large chapel was dedicated, the community included 284 sisters living in 70 houses in 12 dioceses. At the foot of this altar lie the remains of Jacques Dujarrier. When he died February 17, 1838, he was buried near Holy Cross College in Le Mans. When Father Moreau died in 1873, the Sisters of Providence asked to have the remains brought to Rouillé. The main street in Rouillé is named after him. Not far from the church is the Grand Saint-Joseph, one of the residences of the early brothers. When Father Moreau moved the Brothers of St. Joseph from Rouillé to Le Mans, they lived next to the college for the first 6 years. Then they settled into property known as La Charbonnière, just a few miles outside of Le Mans. Father Basile Moreau first met the Brothers of St. Joseph in 1823, 3 years after their foundation. In 1835, the bishop appointed Moreau as the Brothers' superior. Basile Moreau was born in Ligny-en-Belin, about 8 miles from Le Mans. The landscape is flat and the soil is fertile. On February 21, 1799, Basil was born in a single-story house similar to this one, across the street from the parish church. The main street is named Rue Basile Moreau. A local artist used the plans from the old church to do this painting of Lenier, as it was at the time of Father Moreau's birth. Basil was baptized 10 days after his birth, probably because his parents waited for a priest who had not taken the oath to the government. The Moreau family property was named Haute-Éclair. The residence has been reconfigured and renovated, but the wine cellar is relatively unchanged. This is the interior of the cellar, where Louis Moreau, Basil's father, and a local wine merchant stored wine barrels. Above the cellar was a residence space which the family used. It is possible that Basil, who was the 9th of 14 children, lived in this section with the other Moreau boys. The present church in Lenier-en-Balin, St. Martin's, was built in 1866 and thus did not exist during Moreau's childhood. However, he prayed in this church and attended its dedication. 2 stained glass windows, which he donated for the old church, have been preserved. They show the Holy Cross seal, 3 hearts above the cross and anchor. The choirmaster's house was very familiar to young Basil. It is now the town hall. This is Le Mans. The old city was built on a small hill surrounded by a brick wall built in the 3rd century by the Gauls and the Romans. On the crest is St. Julian's Cathedral, built from the 11th to the 15th centuries. The interior of the cathedral reflects the various periods when it was built. The pillars and arches are Romanesque from the 11th century. The ceiling and sanctuary are Gothic. At the rear of the cathedral, an immense window depicts St. Julian, the first bishop of Le Mans, near the end of the 3rd century. The stained glass windows are remarkable. This represents the Ascension. Some experts believe the window dates back to 1140. This bas-relief shows Pope Pius IX visiting Bishop Jean-Baptiste Bouvier on his deathbed. It is intriguing that this staunch Gallican, who so opposed Father Moreau's missionary plans, would be blessed by the Pope before his death. Father Moreau attended the blessing of this tomb, built a few years after Bouvier's death in 1854. Old Le Mans is a beautiful city with which Basil Moreau would have been familiar. Because of its slopes, Le Mans has several stairways. The St. George Tunnel leads to the riverbank. Some signs are in Old French, which recall the first Plantagenets, Earls of Maine, whose kingdom extended from Scotland to the Pyrenees. The Abbey Les Pots, near Le Mans, was founded by Queen Bérengère, widow of King Richard the Lionhearted. This abbey is near the river where the first Marianites and a brother would go to wash the laundry from Holy Cross College. This was Collège Sainte-Croix, established by Father Moreau. As with many buildings in France that were confiscated by the state in 1905, it became a military barracks. The College of Our Lady of Holy Cross was conducted by Holy Cross for 31 years. The present Holy Cross Church was the college chapel. When the school was auctioned in 1869, Marquis de Nicolet purchased the building at the request of the Bishop of Le Mans. 2 years later, it was sold to the Jesuits, who kept the name Collège Sainte-Croix. The Army took possession of the church and the school in 1911, following the anti-clerical laws instituted by Émile Combes. The courtyard was a place of much activity for both community members and students. During World War I, the church was used as a depot for military supplies and a stable for horses. In 1930, Father James Donahue, Superior General, bought it and cleaned the sanctuary on his knees. This pictures Wednesday, May 3rd, 1865, a day of perpetual adoration. The Eucharist was exposed in front of a mantle of red velvet. Father Moreau was probably in the church that day. In restoring the church, Father Donahue kept only one pulpit. The main altar was elaborately decorated. The church sustained heavy damage during World War II. Afterward, the sanctuary was remodeled. The new stained glass windows were made in Brittany in 1947. The Seven Sorrows of Mary are depicted here in stained glass, as well as some of the ministries of the congregation and events in the congregation's life. Written in the window is the date of our return to this cradle of Holy Cross, 1931. The side windows represent the radiant cross. It has been a parish church since 1938. Behind the cathedral from this view can be seen the Communal College of Le Mans, which competed with Holy Cross College. Further to the right is the large building of St. Vincent's Seminary, where Basil Moreau studied and then taught theology for 13 years. St. Vincent Chapel was decorated when Father Moreau taught at the seminary from 1823 to 1836. He would gather the auxiliary priests here to pray together. During Father Moreau's time, the monks' dining room was used by the seminarians and teachers. The first auxiliary priests used this hall and fireplace during the winter. Today, this is Lycée Bellevue, a coeducational high school. Father Moreau would walk along here to cross the river and go to Good Shepherd Monastery. Sometimes in the winter, he would have to walk barefoot to avoid slipping on the ice. The large wooden door was the main entrance to St. Vincent's Seminary. Good Shepherd Monastery is down the hill and across the river. This chapel is in the old monastery of the Visitation in Le Mans, located on Place de la République. This is where Basil Moreau was ordained a priest in 1821, when he was 22 years old. After ordination, Father Moreau spent 2 years with the Sulpicians at the Solitude of Issy. Father Gabriel Molvo was the superior here and served as Father Moreau's spiritual director for 25 years. C.S.C served as the minor seminary for the diocese. Father Moreau's first ministry was to serve here as spiritual director and teacher of philosophy. Today, this structure is a museum. Montenay is the small village where Mother Mary of the Seven Dolours was born. The farmhouse was called L'Osier, meaning the wicker. It is the birthplace of Léocadie Gascoin. She was the fourth in this middle-class family of 6 children. This is where her mother died when Léocadie was a small child. The present church was built after her childhood. This baptismal fount was used on the day of her birth, March 1st, 1818. When he founded Holy Cross College in 1838, Father Moreau hired a group of women for various domestic services. With this, he implemented a project that had been envisioned by the Brothers of St. Joseph, adding a branch of women to this community of brothers and priests. Father Moreau sent 4 of these women, including Léocadie Gascoin, to the Good Shepherd Monastery for their novitiate. He wanted them to be religious and educators. Our Lady of Chartres was among Mother Mary of the Seven Dolours' main devotions. She had a statue of this mother and child in her room. In 1867, she made a pilgrimage to Chartres, asking that the Marianite constitutions be approved by the Vatican. As she was praying, her request was answered. This photo of Mother Mary was taken in New Orleans in the spring of 1870. She was 52 years old. A second photo was taken on the same day. She holds the constitutions approved 3 years earlier. On the table is a statue of Our Lady of Chartres. The Marianites cared for Father Moreau after his resignation as Superior General. He celebrated Mass for them in their chapel on Bollé Street. In their chapel, he celebrated the 50th anniversary of his ordination in 1871. In 1873, his funeral Mass took place in this same chapel. The Marianites' boarding school was in the same building. This group photo, taken in 1896, included students who knew Mother Mary. She died in 1900. Next to the boarding school was the Marianites' Clinic, a private hospital which was the forerunner of Clinique Sainte-Croix. The Solitude of the Savior was the first novitiate established by Father Moreau in 1840 for the Society of Priests. This Châteauneuf property, with its expansive view of the Rhine and Sarthe river valleys, provided an excellent setting for recollection. When the property was sold at auction, the Lefebvre family bought it. In 1927, the Marianites purchased it. The Solitude of the Savior on Gazonfière Hill has been maintained by the Marianites. During the 1940s, the greenhouse was replaced by the Generalate. During Father Moreau's time, the lower section of the Solitude, with the 5 windows, was the novitiate. The corridor was added later to provide an alternative route from the kitchen to the community room without going through the chapel. This statue, showing the 3 branches of Holy Cross, was carved by an artist living in Solesmes, Raymond Dubois. From the rear of the Solitude, we see the former Generalate on the left, now Notre-Dame de la Solitude, a residence for elderly Marianites. Next is the original part of the building. The large chapel was built by a disciple of Benedictine architect Don Paul Belot, and the section to the right was used as the novitiate during the 1960s, and then as convent for a local community. Father Moreau would relax and pray in these woods. Here he wrote the sisters' constitutions. This is Father Moreau's room when he was the director of novices at the Solitude. The next room contains various items used by Mother Mary of the Seven Dolours. The small chapel, including altar and reredos, date from Father Moreau's time. Father Moreau was given this chalice in 1872 on the occasion of his 50th anniversary of ordination. This aerial view shows Clinique Sainte-Croix and Our Lady of Gazonfière residence across from the Solitude, both formerly owned by the Marianites. Précigné was built as a monastery in the 17th century. After the Revolution, it was used as a minor seminary. Edward Sorin studied here. Purchased by the Marianites in 1921, it has been used for several purposes: vacation place for underprivileged children, hospital for the poor elderly, a home for children with tuberculosis, and a refuge for Jewish children during World War II. From 1923 to 1950, it was the Marianite Generalate. Today, it is used to care for the elderly and the handicapped. St. Peter's Abbey in Salem was founded in 1010. It was restored by a good friend of Father Moreau, Dom Guéranger, at the same time that Holy Cross was founded. The church was built during the 15th century. The Pietà of Salem, Our Lady of Seven Dolours, is among other excellent sculptures from the 15th century. This is the church in Ahuillé, the birthplace of Father Edward Sorin. In the 1830s, the Brothers of St. Joseph taught in this parish. Édouard Sorin de la Gaultière belonged to the lower nobility and was born in 1814 in this manor called La Roche. Though he did not experience the French Revolution, his parents had hidden two priests, just as others had done for the seminarian Jacques Dujarrier. A plaque in the church recalls his life and work. It reads, "To the memory of Father Edward Sorin, born in La Roche on February 6, 1814, baptized in the church of Ahuillé on that same day, ordained a priest in 1838, admitted to the Congregation of Holy Cross in 1839, sent to America in 1841, he founded the American province of Holy Cross. He was Superior General for 35 years. Father Moreau lived his last years in this house on Rue Jeanne d'Arc. It belonged to his own sisters. The Marianites brought him his meals. From his room, he witnessed the final sessions of the auction at Holy Cross College in 1869. The house was demolished in the 1990s. Father Moreau gave his last homily in the church of Ivry-l'Évêque on January 1st, 1873, where he went to replace the sick pastor. Stomach pain forced him to return to Le Mans after Mass. He remained in bed and died 3 weeks later. He died in this room in Le Mans, in the house on Rue Jeanne d'Arc. He slept in this chair for many years because of problems with his back and legs. The crypt, under the main altar of Holy Cross Church, holds the remains of Father Moreau. The celebration pictured here took place in 1987 on the occasion of the sesquicentennial of the Fundamental Pact uniting the Brothers of St. Joseph and the auxiliary priests. This likeness of Father Moreau, which is considered to be among the best, was sculpted by Henri Charlier. The Marianite cemetery in Le Mans is used by all three branches of Holy Cross. The city administration requested a portion of this land for use as a cemetery. The agreement stipulated that a section would be reserved for Holy Cross. Mother Mary of the Seven Dolours died in January 1900 and was buried not far from Father Moreau. When his remains were removed to the crypt of the church, Mother Mary's were brought into the cemetery chapel. The seeds of the family of Holy Cross were planted by a 53-year-old pastor in a small village. Father Dujarrier envisioned a community with 3 branches at the service of the church. Father Basil Moreau, a man of faith sensitive to God's Word, founded the family of Holy Cross, giving it the distinctive features which distinguish it even today.